Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to extend a warm welcome to each and every one of you to the third International Conference on Business, Social Sciences, Economics, and Technology 2024. We are thrilled to introduce to you our research about culture and identity, history, and the problem of that identity, theorizing the revival of Zulu's extinct culture in Zake's the Zulus of New York. Presented by Dr. Abdalhadi Jweid, who's a literature professor at the Faculty of Educational Sciences and Arts as the first author, and Dr. Fatima Al Khamisi as the second author. Moving to the abstract. This article examines how Zake Smith's novel, The Zulus of New York, uses history to revive a lost South African identity. It focuses on the Zulu people's ability to maintain their traditions despite colonial oppression. The article challenges traditional post colonial views, arguing that the Zulu were not merely victims of Western dominance but actively resisted reclaiming their cultural identity and rights within a border South African context. So basically, the article highlights the resilience of the Zulu people in preserving their traditions despite colonial pressures. Moreover, it challenges conventional post colonial perspective by asserting that the Zulu were not passive victims of Western hegemony, but rather engaged in active resistance to reclaim their cultural identity and rights within larger South African border. This picture depicts a group of Zulus people dressed in elaborate traditional attire. By looking at the literature review, we see in post colonial lack identity culture surplus. The core argues that cultural identity emerges from the experiences of persecuted peoples, particularly the colonized minority who develop psychic complexes as a result of colonization. The colonized minority, described as the marginalized other, faces an impasse in formulating their new liberal identity due to the lack of social discourse, hindering the transition from pre colonial to post colonial identity. In Sufism and Transcendentalism, a post structuralist dialogue between Rumi and Witten, Shaikh examines identity from a cultural perspective, asserting that the identity and its cultural traits stem from the self other relationship, which is fundamental in understanding the dichotomy between culture and identity. Shaikh suggests that to ensure the emergence of a distinct cultural identity representing a specific ethnic group or nation, political discourse must be disregarded. Again, in Ami Baba's An Introduction and Critique, Robinson approaches identity through Ami Baba's conceptualization of ambivalence, emphasizing the opposing dimensions and perceptions within a culture. He argues that colonial discourse aims to produce complaint colonized subjects who mimic the colonizer's assumptions, values, habits, thus perpetuating colonial ideologies. Also, in When Victims Become Colors, Mamadani explores the concept of political identity, which is often overlooked in post colonial studies, emphasizing its role in crises such as civil wars and social clashes among nations. He suggests that political identities can lead to the creation of new political based states through the formation of cultural identities. In imperial culture and the Sudan, authorship, identity, and the British Empire, Leah Paradis investigates identity through the lens of collective memory, attributing identity change to specific geographical terrains. She argues that the collective identity empowers natives to assert their independence as they undergo unique experiences in the face of colonial imperialism. Finally, the Roma and their struggle for identity in contemporary Europe. Hap Van Bar and Angela Cozy discuss identity within the context of social conservatism, describing society as a medium for politics of identity. They explore the tension between social essentialism and constructivism in shaping identity, which has been challenged over time due to the evolving social norms. Moving to the research problem. The purpose of the study is to explore the use of history in reviving South African identity, as depicted in Zake's meta novel, The Zulus of New York, to theorize the concept of historical identity by analyzing the author's insights presented in the novel. This topic has not been extensively studied in previous research, making this study unique in its approach. In this picture, we can see it depicts the various ethnic groups in Africa, objectives and questions of the study. The objectives of this study is to examine the authorial insights projected in the selected novel and explore historical identity as a medium of reviving South African extinct identity. As for the questions of the study, this study attempts to answer the following questions. How are the authorial insights projected in the selected novel? How does historical identity revive South African extinct identity? In our effort to express the African identity, this picture represents a group of the Zulus people in their traditional dress. Moving to the discussion. First, historical identity portrayal. In the Zulus of New York, Zake's meta vividly portrays the struggle of the Zulu characters, like Ondani, to reclaim their historical identity amidst Western hegemony. Through their actions and dialogues, the characters exemplify the resilience and determination of the Zulu people to maintain their traditions and autonomy despite colonial oppression. Also, the authorial perspective on character development. Meta's emphasis on creating realistic and relatable characters is evident in the portrayal of Ndani and other Zulu characters in the novel. Through detailed descriptions and announced character development, Meta brings these characters to life, allowing readers to empathize with their struggles and aspirations. Finally, the integration of culture and identity. The Zulus of New York vividly weaves together themes of culture and identity, showcasing the Zulus' aspiration to integrate these aspects within their social scope. Meta skillfully explores how historical events shape the identity of the Zulu people, reflecting their desire to revert to the past to reclaim their autonomy. Moving to the conclusion. So, the study has three interrelated findings. The first one, the concept of historical identity is viable to be discussed in terms of the native extinct identity. That is, South African native societies had been subject to drastic cultural changes brought by the imperial Western view. The second finding is that this cultural assimilation is the essence of the study's, second finding. In other words, the implicit narratives and sites of dead identity portrayed amid the Zulus of New York. To clarify, the novel abounds with narrative descriptions that hold diverse narrative connotations. Finally, the study has examined the issue of historical identity and its implication of dead identity from the authorial perspective. The author, Zake's meta, is overtly concerned with the role of history in shaping native identity. Being so, he sorely projects this concern in the narrative word of the novel to give us a vivid picture of how identity could be transformed, reinforced, and ultimately revived through meticulous narrative descriptions. And here is the picture of the Zulus case, as we can see. Please have a chance to have a look at the references listed here. And Terema Kase. Thank you.